What's up, guys? Rick here with your DFS preview for this week's John Deere Classic. We are right back at it again. This will be a data-driven research process on the golf course, the field, everything in between. Maybe we can find some players who are trending in the right direction and maybe avoid some who are going in the wrong way. Let's just address it out of the gate. It's a weak field. It's probably the weakest field we've had all year. Someone will still win. There will still be an optimal lineup. They'll still hand out a trophy and about $1.5 million bucks, but because the Scottish Open is coming up and then the Open Championship, a lot of the top guys are opting to go over there. But these are the fields worth all the dorks that we normally play, right? Now they're just a little bit more expensive. So we'll talk through all that as we get closer to the cheat sheet, but I do want to start with the golf course, and it is TPC Deere Run. This is the course key stats model on RickRunGood.com. It's my website, a giant fantasy golf and golf betting database to hopefully make your research process a little bit easier. I got to admit, feels a little bit like last week, right? Detroit Golf Club kind of just rolled over and surrendered a bunch of birdies. That is also going to be the case around TPC Deere Run. It's par 71 instead of a par 72, but we have seen a lot of really low scores here. You got to be able to really pump it under par. You got to be able to hold your breath a little bit. The model, I'll admit, doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I think that's probably the first time I've said that this year. You know, when you kind of look through the numbers, and the way that this works is it looks at, you know, the last 8 years of data, the last 8 years of results, starts to build the model of players that have had a lot of success around this place. And there's not a whole lot that stands out other than driving accuracy, which I don't think is going to be, I guess it'll be a little bit important, right? I think playing out of the fairway will give you an opportunity to hit greens. I kind of like good drive percentage a little bit more, but driving accuracy has been very, very strongly correlated to success over the years. And if you think about why that might be, you know, Steve Stricker has had a lot of success around here. Zach Johnson has had a lot of success around here. You do not necessarily have to be long. You can be a plotter. You can be one of these guys who, you know, basically all the par fives are reachable in two. So I guess it's almost, the way that I interpret this, and you can interpret this differently, is that it's not necessarily about playing out of the fairway as much as it is that shorter guys have a better chance here relative to a lot of other courses on the PGA Tour. So that's the one that stands out the most. And then off the tee ranks 18th, which means there's only 17 other courses in which stroke skiing off the tee is more correlated to success. But a lot of these are just kind of middle of the road or bottom tier stats. If you look at who this fits over the last 36 rounds, so you take the data from the top, you apply it to the last 36 rounds or any number of rounds that you want, Russell Henley comes out on top. He gets the best adjusted fit number. Ches Reavie second, Brendan Todd, Ben Martin, David Lingmerth. So that's kind of what we're dealing with this week. Accurate guys, good approach numbers, might be able to fill it up. We're going to look at things like opportunities plus. That's birdie looks inside of 15 feet and inside of 10 feet. And we'll kind of see the way that we can start attacking this field. And we're going to just get used to paying a little bit more for names that we've been investing in. They're certainly more expensive this week. Here's the cheat sheet, and there are 4 golfers over $10,000, and it is a fascinating little group of names here. So Denny McCarthy, Russell Henley, Ludwig Aberg, and Cam Young. Wow. Okay, so let's start with this. Russell Henley has been the best player in this field dating back to the last 36 rounds. Here's the power rankings. He's gaining 1.57 strokes per round over the last 36. Denny McCarthy is essentially tied with him, 1.56. So a 100th of a stroke per round behind. We'll just call that 0. These guys are basically 1 and 1A or 1A and 1B for the best players in the field over the last 36 rounds. The way they do it, however, is pretty different. You know, Henley's your ball striker who looks to putt well enough, and McCarthy is your putter who looks to hit it well enough. And if you put them together, they'd be one of the best players in the world. But let's start with, oh, there you go. Hat tip to Ricky Fowler for getting the job done, right? Good on you, Rick. Let's start with Denny McCarthy here. So he's the most expensive golfer. This is probably the first time in his career he's been the most expensive golfer. Is it deserved? Absolutely. He is still putting the lights out. He gains seemingly every single week, and he gains multiple strokes with the flat stick every single week. And we've been tracking this ball striking prowess improvement over the last couple of weeks, and he continues down that path. Again, I added this button here recently to get you easier access to clicking on the tournament history. Finished T6 last year where he gained 5 strokes on approach, and that was kind of more of an outlier last year, right? I guess he was playing pretty well coming in. He had this 7th place finish. Actually, this kind of feels a lot like what he was doing last year. Putting very well, had a couple of improvements in the ball striking categories, goes out and does it at TPC Deere Run and finishes T6. It's actually pretty similar to what he was doing last year. So I think that's pretty well deserved. I think a lot of people will opt to get one of the top 3 guys. That's Henley, it's McCarthy, and then it is Ludwig. I'll be very interested. I think this is a week to really let the projected ownerships dictate some decisions. Is Denny McCarthy significantly better than Russell Henley, or vice versa? The answer is no. But is one of them going to come in at 25% ownership, and is one of them going to come in at 15% ownership? Because now that changes the math, and now it becomes a lot more interesting, right? If they are very, very similar players, which we've seen over the last 36 rounds, if you can't split hairs, let the ownership do it. We'll know. So ownership will pump into RickRunGood.com over the course of the week. First run will probably be Monday night, and then it'll update a couple of times a day until lock. And then when we do the live chat on Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, we'll have a really, really good idea of what that projected ownership is going to look like. So I imagine most are going to go for McCarthy or Russell Henley. Here's the Henley profile. It's been splendid, right? He is back to being a one stroke per round golfer. If you look at the last 36 and you sort it by strokes gained approach, Russell Henley's name is going to be 3rd behind just Mark Hubbard and Alex Smalley here. So certainly get where everybody's coming from here. And then he's been putting a lot better recently than he has been basically for the most part of his career. You look back at John Deere Classic history, pretty darn good, right? 3 times, but one of them was 2014 when he finished T27. More recently, he's gone runner-up and T11. So really good stuff there. So I'm going to let the ownership dictate what I do at the top of the board. I imagine there will be a lot of love for Ludwig. Now, he is the flavor of the month. He is very, very good. He is special. He got off to a hot start first 2 rounds last week at the Rocket Mortgage and then kind of faded on the weekend. That's going to happen. He is young. He is raw. He's trying to figure everything out. But when you gain 15 strokes from tee to green over your last 3 PGA Tour starts, basically every time you tee it up in a PGA Tour or a European Tour event, you are definitely making the cut or have been, and then you are within the top 25. And now you get one of the worst fields of the year and probably by far the worst field that you've played in. I get that. So those 3 I expect to be fairly popular. The pivot likely comes here to Cam Young. So we've got to zoom out a little bit on Cam Young here. If you go back 3 months, maybe not even that long, and you showed anybody in the world this field, they would have said Cam Young, by far the best player in this field, should be the favorite to win it, should be $11,000, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's still pretty true, despite the fact that he's been, I don't want to say struggling. He's been struggling recently, right? So here's where we're at. Still driving it very well, no problems. You're always going to get that from Cam Young. The ball striking numbers and the approach numbers are better. The around the green play, better. And we are still struggling with this flat stick. If you look at something like opportunities or opportunities gained or opportunities plus, right? How many looks a golfer gives themselves? It's so much like fantasy football, right? Wide receivers can't score unless they're getting targets, right? It's very difficult. You can do it, but it's very difficult to make birdies if you're not giving yourself a lot of looks. Cam Young, despite these recent struggles, still gives himself a ton of looks. 5.8 opportunities around, 3.5 opportunities plus per round, both of those in basically the top 10 of this field. He gains in both of those categories. I believe that this would be like we'll see what happens on Wednesday, but I think there's a chance that Cam Young wins everybody all the money this week, right? I mean, he's just so talented, And if he rolls the rock even close to a 0, he's probably in this thing. So we'll see as the week rolls out, but I imagine the top 3 are going to be pretty popular, and then Cam Young is probably your pivot for the week. The 9K range is interesting as well. My eyes immediately go to Eric Cole. So I'm going to send this out in my weekly newsletter this week. By the way, I send out an email, a newsletter, a rundown, the Run Good Rundown every single week, recapping the week before and looking ahead to the previous week. It usually goes out on Tuesday or Wednesday. It's free. You should sign up for this. There's a link in the description. It's rickrungood.com/newsletter. It's just a bunch of data stuff that I come across. I'm just kind of scrolling through last week, so you can check it out. But one of the things that's going to show up in there, spoiler alert, is that Eric Cole is, since the start of the year, since January 1st, is the 14th best player in the world. Not in the field. He is the 14th best player in the world in terms of strokes gained. And it's been consistent inside the top 25, a couple of pops in Mexico and the Honda Classic and the Canadian Open. He's a very solid tee to green player who has been scorching with the flat stick lately, +5, +6, +5, +2.5. And again, we've talked about now getting kind of the weakest field he's ever gotten. Well, I don't know if that's true because he did play some pretty weak fields earlier this year, but it's a weak field and he's still playing great golf. I think this is a really, really good opportunity for him. Adam Schenk is the other one. You know, Adam Schenk and his wife had a baby recently, and he's kind of missed a couple of cuts from the Wells Fargo to the PGA. We were tracking this, and if I remember correctly, these missed cuts were not all that bad. Let me see if that's actually true before I commit to that. Yeah, missed the cut at the U.S. Open by a half a stroke, missed the cut at the Travelers by a half a stroke, and that one was a great ball striking performance. And then when he plays well, you know, he's got 3 top 7 finishes in his last 5 starts. Runner-up at the Charles Schwab, T7 at the Memorial, 7th at the Rocket Mortgage, in which he gained 7 strokes ball striking. I also think he was one of the better players over, maybe I'm wrong there. Okay, over the course of the weekend, he gained 4.2 strokes to the field. That was one of the best returns of the final 2 rounds. Same thing on the final 3 rounds. So he played well all week long. And now goes back to a place in which he has popped up a couple of times in the last few starts, right? So he WD, I don't know what happened. He WD'd in 2022. I don't know if it was play-related, injury-related. He was going to miss the cut anyway. He was playing pretty poorly. 2021, he finished T6. 2019, he finished T4 in 2021, T6 in 2019. And this is the best golf that he has played in a long time. The thing that I like about him, this is not a safe option, right? This is not a guy that you think is going to just finish T25 every single week. He's going to miss the cut or he's going to finish inside the top 10. I don't mind that, right? That's kind of how you win all the money here. And when he plays well, I bet you if I ran, I guess I could do this at some point. I do want to run strokes gained when making the cut, something like that. And just say, you know, when someone's playing well, what does their ceiling look like? And I could probably also look at ceiling this way too. Strokes gain distribution. You know, how often is a golfer gaining 4 or more strokes to the field over the last 50 rounds? Does Adam Schenk pop up anywhere? Let's sort by salary and get him in this direction here. So he's here. So, okay. Yeah. I mean, he gains 4 or more strokes to the field more frequently than everyone priced higher than him, except Denny McCarthy. He does it 16% of the time. More than Adam Hadwin, more than Eric Cole, more than Russell Henley, et cetera, et cetera. So when he plays well, he plays real. Now he also loses strokes to the field much more frequently than Denny does, much more frequently than Eric Cole, Russell Henley, some of those other guys. So that's the high risk, high reward nature that you get from Adam Schenk, which I think is pretty appealing. You know, I do start to wonder how the ownership is going to break down in this 9K range, because it seems pretty, I think the top 3 are going to be pretty popular in the 10K range, but I also think there's a lot of pretty good options here in the 9K range, right? Adam Hadwin coming off a runner-up finish in which he lost to a playoff. Eric Cole's going to be very popular. Adam Schenk's going to probably be pretty popular. You have Emiliano Grillo here, who had a runner-up finish here last year, and he won a couple of starts ago. And then you have Seamus Power, who hasn't played as well recently, but he's got decent history around TPC Deere Run. So they can't all be super popular. So again, we're now in the second tier where I feel like we're splitting a lot of hairs, and there's going to be a really good opportunity to get a guy who is very similar to another guy that will be like half the ownership. This feels like, and I don't always, I mean, obviously every week's like a game theory week, but this feels like a strong game theory week with the way that it's already breaking down. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe we get the ownership projections here in a couple hours and I'm completely wrong, but I feel like this is a week to just set the Rick Run Good custom model to, you know, projected or combined ownership 60% and just let it do its thing. But I will point out Emiliano Grillo here. So let's look at him. I mentioned that the win from a couple of starts ago, that was at the Charles Schwab, where, you know, he gained 7 strokes putting, something that is certainly on the upper end of his range of outcomes. But don't look now. Emiliano Grillo has been a very good putter dating back to the Players' Championship. He has gained in 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 10. That is a pretty unheard of stretch for him. He did have a little similar stretch to that here where he gained like 8 in a row and had a bunch of really good finishes, because his results go as far as the putter allows him to. And he's in the midst of another good putting stretch right now. You look at the John Deere Classic history. I mentioned the runner-up finish last year, gained 4 strokes putting. That's the only time he has played this event. So wondering if people will remember and realize that Emiliano Grillo is putting his brains out. So let's just do this. Let's just go back to Holy Grail. Let's do, since the Players' Championship, which was obviously in 2023, it was like March 12th. So let's go March 7th to current. Sort by strokes gained putting. I don't think he's the best in the, wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7th best putter in this field. Emiliano Grillo in the last 4 months is the 7th best putter in the field. That's scary because he's also like the 5th best ball striker. God, is Emiliano going to win this week? Kind of feel like, is this a win coming in? Kind of feels like it, right? All right, pretty cool. I love that. I want to look at Seamus Power real quick. I don't know what I'm going to find, but he's got the good history around this place. Let's see what it is. It's T8 in 2021. He hasn't missed a cut. He's played here 4 times. 3 of them are top 25s. It does go back 6 years. He's been around for a long time. Man, it's just slightly below average every single week. Which when Seamus is going well, you get an accurate driver who can dial in the approaches and he can putt well. We're just not getting that approach play right now. The putter's been fine. I'd even take the driving stuff. I don't know how close he is. Is this close? It kind of feels like a guy who's somewhat close. It's not that bad. But I don't think I can get there with some of the other guys in the 9K range that I think are pretty fascinating as well. The 8K range starts with Alex Smalley, who I like. He made the cut again last week. He was up there on that opportunities and opportunities plus. Jaeger goes out, ties the course record on Sunday at Rocket Mortgage. So now his last 2 Sundays, I love this. So he was putting with a wedge 2 weeks ago, right? So let's find Jaeger here, and he lost like 7.5 strokes putting. Let's see, yeah. So lost 7.5 strokes putting at the Travelers. And then he goes out, gains 4.5 on this Sunday, obviously with his flat stick, and gains 7 in total. So that is a 13-stroke difference in terms of strokes gained between his last 2 Sundays. Good for you. Now, looking at, this is pretty interesting, right? And it don't freak out. But this kind of reminds me of Colin Morikawa's profile, round-by-round profile. And what I mean by that is that he is playing, Jaeger that is, for the vast majority of his rounds, he's playing really well. However, it seems like once a week, he punts away a round. So here's the PGA Championship. Gains 1.5, gains 2.8, gains 3.6, loses 5.5. Here's the Charles Schwab. Loses a little, gains, loses 4.5. The Memorial, +2, +3, +1.5, -1. Travelers, +3, 0, -1, -6.5. And then last week he actually did play well, but he's just been, he still lost strokes to the field on Saturday. He just has been putting 3 rounds together. Very close to put, like, just clean up the 1 round. And we're talking about a lot of real, and Morikawa has been similar, right? The opening round at the Travelers Championship, the WD, the just like 1 bad round a week that kind of makes the results look a lot worse than they actually are. But if you go back, I mean, So let's just do this. Going back to Mexico. So let's say 427 of this year, 427-ish, right? Let's say 426. So he's played 32 rounds since then. He has only lost strokes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them. So he's 22-10 in terms of gaining strokes. However, in those in those 10 rounds that he's lost strokes, he's lost 4, he's lost 5.5, he's lost 6.5. So, I mean, it's like he's wiping out all of his stuff in one go around. Oh, that does not look good. Venus Williams is down. I'm watching Wimbledon on this. She is holding her knee, and that does not look very good. Hope that she's okay, but that, I don't know. That does not look good. So Jaeger's pretty interesting here. The other thing to point out is this tool that I love so much, this trends tool. So this is a way to look at kind of how hot golfers are. And when you scroll down to this 8K range, you're going to find a lot of guys are playing over their baseline. So the way that this looks is, compares 100 round baseline, last 36 rounds, and then adds those together basically and gives you a strokes gain trend number. So you'll see guys that are playing really well. Alex Smalley playing over his baseline and doing it on approach. Bezadenhout playing over his baseline, doing it on approach. Those are very good things. Here was Jaeger. He is actually below his baseline, and now he gets punted a lot because of those couple of bad rounds. But I think there's Patrick Rogers playing over his baseline, well-rounded nature. Nick Taylor's playing a third of a stroke over his baseline. So there's a lot of good options. The bottom one here is probably my favorite. Doug Ghim at $8,000. Talked about him last week, played well, got off to a hot start, and played okay the rest of the week. This is about as good as you can get on terms of heat, right? He is 3/4 of a stroke better per round to himself in the last 36, and all of it is from tee to green. All of it is from tee to green. So when you go down and look at the breakout candidates tool, Doug Ghim's right here, right? He has not been getting lucky with the putter. He's playing well from tee to green. This is a breakout candidate. Same with like a Ryan Palmer. Some of these guys have small sample sizes, so I'll point out like Bezadenhout's on the good side, Grayson Sigg, S.H. Kim, they're on the good side, Chris Kirk, for example. But the Doug Ghim resurgence, I believe, is real, and it's back to really what he was as a player 18 months ago. The 7K range, we need to point out Chez Reavie. So there is I think it's a little bit overblown, but there has been a very strong correlation to accurate drivers of the golf ball and success around TPC Deere Run. That is statistically true. Whether we think it's noise or whatever is fine, but that is statistically true. The other good thing about Reavie, he's the collapse on Sunday at the Travelers was coming, right? He had already gained 9 strokes putting through the first 3 rounds. That was going to be unsustainable, but he's a very, very good putter. You can see that he's gained multiple strokes putting in basically 9 out of his last 10 rounds. So we knew that was coming. Then he goes out and he gains 8.7 at the Rocket Mortgage on approach, and loses strokes off the tee, which is really not a place he should be gaining strokes off the tee. That's not a very good setup for him. And he gains 6.5 strokes from tee to green and finishes T29. So that is a much better performance than I think we should have gotten from Chez Reavie. So now he's got 6 consecutive cuts that he's made. I'll round up, round down, 3 straight top 25 finishes, and a course fit that should be pretty good for him. Now, course history's been all over the place. He's missed 2 of his last 3 cuts. That dates back 5 years, though. Earlier in his career, he had better success. He had a stretch from 2011 to 2017, which he made 5 straight cuts. T5 was his best finish there. I think this is a buy spot for Reavie. And you got to play Reavie, good course, bad course. You got to be very selective with him. I think it's okay to be selective and select him. By the way, for those looking for the Venus Williams update, they're playing again. So all good. She looks like she's good. The strokes gained approach guys, we got to look at Hubbard's round by round, because Russell Henley, I think it's the last 36 rounds, is second on approach to only Mark Hubbard. So let's look at what Hubbard's been up to on a round by round basis because he's missed 2 consecutive cuts. Approach numbers for the most part there. Wasn't very good on Friday at Detroit Golf Club, but every other round he gained strokes on approach. That's the first time he's lost since the PGA Championship on Saturday. Kind of the rest of his game has not been super sharp. Boy, what do we want to do with Hubbard here? Man. I'm genuinely torn on this. Played well here last year, finished T13. The off the tee numbers are bad. But he's accurate. Do I want Hubbard or Reavie? I think I want Reavie. I think if you're buying Reavie, you've got to be buying Hubbard too. If you think this is a good Reavie spot, it also probably has to be a good Hubbard spot. Hubbard's not as good of a putter as Reavie is, but he's probably a better approach player, or at least a more consistent one. Wow, that's tough. I think you got to buy both of them. Peter Quest is at 7,400. You probably saw him on the telecast last week, but let's see. I think I've got 12 measured rounds on him. So yeah, he's a pretty darn good golfer, right? So I've got him at the Valero Texas Open, the Byron Nelson, the Canadian Open, and the Rocket Mortgage. Missed the cut at the Texas Open, T14, T57, T4 in his last 3. And he's a very good driver. I mean, look at the ball striking numbers, right? It's a small sample size, obviously, but that's what, 14 strokes over his last 12 rounds in the approach play. And he's generally a good putter. That's a really, really good stat profile. And these guys all have a lot to play for, but he's very, very close to special temporary membership status on the PGA Tour. I think he needed a solo 4th last week. He got a T4, or maybe he needed a solo 3rd. So he's probably very close to achieving that. And I like what I've gotten out of him. So yeah, pretty good golf being played there by Peter Quest at 7,400. I do not think that is necessarily like some, what is it? What am I thinking of? Something in the pan, spark in the pan, dark in the pan. What is that phrase? I say it all the time. Flash in the pan. Sorry. Flash in the pan. Callum Tarrant had, and let me show you this actually real quick. I can show you both these guys. So ball striking over the final 2 rounds last week, Peter Quest was second in ball striking over the final 2 rounds, 5.5 to only Vincent Norman. Look at what Callum Tarrant did though, right? Callum Tarrant gained 10.5 strokes ball striking, best in the field in ball striking last week, dead last in putting, which is good and bad, right? You know, the likelihood that he, putts that poorly again is not very good. He's not a good putter, but he's like, that's well below his expected baseline. He's driving it beautifully. The approach numbers are pretty solid. This is a guy that I think you've got to give a pretty good chance to. He's got a pretty good sense of humor about it as well. He like tweeted at somebody tagged me in a tweet and tagged him. And then he replied like, well, there's only one way to go from here, which I thought was pretty cool. Oh, the Lucas Glover stuff. Yeah. Okay. So I almost forgot. Lucas Glover, $7,200 and he's 70-1. I've already bet that. So, boy, there's a lot to unwrap here. But Lucas Glover finished T4 last week. He is consistently one of the better ball strikers on the PGA Tour. He gained 5.5 strokes putting last week. He is using that Lab Golf broomstick. I think it's called the Mizzen 2 or something like that. That I think Adam Scott uses the same one. Last week was not the first week he used it. Okay. He used it. I know for sure. So I was going back through the images. He did not use it at the Wells Fargo. I know that he was tinkering with it around the US Open. He did not use it at the US Open because he didn't play the US Open. He didn't get in, but his practice rounds, he was using it. He used it at the Travelers, lost a stroke and a half putting in 2 rounds there, and used it last week. I don't know if he used it in Canada. I don't know if he used it at the Memorial. So it's in play probably between 2 and 4 events. So you could say, was last week an outlier, a lucky putting week, or is he starting to figure out that flat stick, or somewhere in between? The timing of it is really interesting because he's been great at the John Deere Classic, right? He won this event in 2021. He's got a T10 and a T25 in the 2 years prior to that. He is generally not putted well here, right? And even in the year that he won, he only gained 3 strokes putting. So if you can get the really good feels, the really good ball striking, and then he gains a stroke and a half or 2 strokes with the flat stick, That's solving the math problem for Lucas Glover. So if anybody has any photos of whether he was using this broomstick at the Canadian Open or the Memorial or even the Byron Nelson for that matter, I'd be interested. Because I know he wasn't using it at the Wells Fargo. So that's as far back as I need to go. Keep me in mind. The 6K range, Grayson Sig, right? He's made 3 cuts in a row. He showed up in that breakout candidates chart, right? Where he's putting well below his baseline, but he's hitting it really well. Finished 16th here last year. I think that makes decent sense. Let's just pull up his profile just so I can really get a look at it. Yeah, I mean, he's gained multiple strokes on approach in the last 3 starts. The putter historically pretty bad, but getting a little bit warmer, which is why the bounce back the bounce back chart likes him a little bit. Love the Mizuno hat, but that's about the nicest thing I can say about the rest of that stat profile. You do have some other guys who are flashing a little bit, right? Marty Dow, when he's going well, can get heated up pretty quickly. 17th at the Rocket Mortgage. We saw him finish 5th at the Byron Nelson. Carl Yuan, same thing. Like, what a blast to watch this guy. He's got 2 top 20s in his last 3 starts. One was the Canadian Open, which was a pretty strong field, and then 14th last week. So we've got some guys who are kind of heating up. You're probably not going to see too many guys who are playing super incredible golf. That's why they're priced down here, but we got a couple guys who can heat up. Ryan Moore might get a little run here. $6,900. He's 4th in this range on approach play in the last 35 rounds. And also he has a really good history around this place. So if you go to just open this up to all years and do everybody in this field at the John Deere Classic. Oh, clear out your date range so that you don't get the wrong results, and then so John Deere Classic, and then sort by, strokes gained total, and then look for guys that have a decent sample size. Zach Johnson, obviously number 1. He's gaining nearly 2 strokes per round in 56 rounds. Here's Ryan Moore. Basically, of anybody who's played at least 20 rounds, he's the second best player at the John Deere Classic. And even as his game has gotten worse over the last couple of years, he's still pretty much showed up here. The last 3 years, they didn't play it in 2020. So last 3 editions, T24 runner-up, T18. He won it back in 2016, had a couple of top 10s before that. So I don't think it's the worst flyer in the world. Quite honestly, I can show you his stat profile because the approach numbers are still pretty decent. And yeah, I mean, for the 6K range, a guy that gains on approach basically every single week of the year is pretty good. Doesn't drive it all that well anymore, but that's probably because of lack of distance as opposed to, still very, very accurate. And if that's the key this week, and the stats say that it's historically been a good key, Ryan Moore's not a bad play. Let's see if we can find some others. Here is the custom model at RickRunGood.com. I don't think we need to get too super crazy here. So let's give a nod to the numbers, and we will say, for driving, let's say 15 for accuracy, 5 for distance. Okay, that's what we're going to say. Then we will say on approach, I think you need to give yourself a lot of opportunities here. So let's say, and it's probably going to be a wedge fest. So let's do this: 10 on 100 to 125, 10 on 125 to 150, and 10 on opportunities plus gained, which is how many looks you're giving yourself inside of 10 feet for birdie compared to the rest of the field. Around the green, I don't really care about. If you're using it, you're probably in big trouble. And then let's do 2 things. Let's do strokes gained putting last 36, and let's do bonus putting. I like bonus putting for these like high upside birdie fests. This is, do you make all your putts within 5 feet, and how many do you make outside of 20 feet? So we've got that taken care of. Let's do a little bit on course history, which would be TPC Deere Run. We'll throw 10 on that. And then we will do 10 on easy courses. And then we will let's just do our final 10 on like strokes gained total last 100 or something like that. Or let's do it like this: strokes gained total. All right. My number 1 golfer is, shut it down. We're done here. Emiliano Grillo. He's going to win this thing, right? In the matter of whatever this has taken, 30 minutes, I don't think I really was all that interested in Emiliano Grillo, and now I'm just all in. I'm going to write his name down so I don't forget. As if I could forget. I might go with all G's this week. Glover, Grillo, who else? Hadwin's number 2, Eric Cole number 3, Russell Henley number 4, Mark Hubbard number 5, Denny McCarthy number 6. Nice. Christian Bezadenhout, a guy I don't play a lot, ranked 7th. Ches Reavie 8, Carson Young 9, Taylor Moore 10. Couple of notables. Doug Gimmett 12, $8,000. That's interesting. Chris Kirk and Adam Schenk actually do not rate out well for me here. 19th and 20th, they're both in the $9,000 range. Same with JT Poston. JT Poston's $9,000. I have him at 25th. Wow, it's a super interesting top 10. I have to save this. So 2023 John Deere Classic Monday. Wow. It's one of those weeks. I love all these guys. How fun is that? Okay. Interesting. Well, listen, we'll cover more on the live chat. We'll answer as many questions, comments, or concerns as you have. 3 p.m. Eastern time, Rick Run Good YouTube channel. Go sign up for the newsletter, rickrungood.com/newsletter. Go sign up for Rick Run Good, rickrungood.com. Go have a blast. Have a happy and safe 4th. Chat with you guys soon. Good luck.